Most people think overthinking is a flaw, a sign that something is wrong in your mind, a weakness you should fix as fast as possible. But what if that same mental noise you keep trying to silence is the exact thing separating average minds from deeply creative ones? Because here is the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. The mind that overthinks is often the same mind that creates things others cannot even imagine. You sit alone at night, phone face down. The world is quiet, but your thoughts are not. You replay conversations that already ended. You imagine outcomes that have not happened. You analyze meanings that others never even noticed. And you call it stress. But something deeper is happening underneath. Your brain is not just worrying. It is connecting. It is simulating. It is building alternative realities faster than you can control them. Most people see one thought and move on. You see one thought and it opens 10 more doors. And this is where everything begins. Because creativity does not come from silence. It comes from collision. People think creativity is about relaxation, peace, and empty minds. But the reality is very different. The most creative minds in history were rarely quiet inside. They were noisy, constantly building, breaking, rearranging ideas that others never bothered to touch. Your overthinking is not random. It is associative thinking running without limits. Every memory links to another memory. Every emotion triggers another interpretation. Every small detail becomes a system in your mind. While others see moments, you see patterns. And patterns are where creativity is born. But there is a cost. Because the same mechanism that makes you creative also makes you overwhelmed. Your brain is designed to predict danger, avoid mistakes, and reduce uncertainty. So it keeps running simulations. What if this goes wrong? What if that person meant something else? What if I made a mistake? This is not weakness. This is survival software running in a modern world it was never designed for. But here is the twist. The most creative people do not turn this system off. They learn how to direct it. Think about this for a moment. Every invention started as overthinking. Every story started as someone refusing to let a thought go. Every breakthrough started as a mind that could not accept simple answers. While most people stop at the first conclusion, overthinkers keep going. And sometimes that becomes a prison. But sometimes it becomes genius. There is a moment you have probably experienced. You are thinking about something small, a conversation, a decision, a mistake, and suddenly your mind expands it into something bigger. You are not just thinking about what happened. You are thinking about why people behave the way they do, how emotions work, how life patterns repeat. That moment is not noise. That is insight trying to form. But most people never stay long enough in that space to see it clearly. They panic. They distract themselves. They label it as anxiety and shut it down. And just like that, creativity dies before it fully forms. There is a part of your brain called the default mode network. It activates when you are not focused on the outside world. It is responsible for imagination, memory linking, future simulation, and self-reflection. In simple terms, it is the system that builds stories in your head. When this system is active, your mind is not broken. It is building meaning. Overthinkers live in this space more than others. And that is why they often feel different. Not because they are lost, but because they are constantly inside the part of the brain where ideas are born. But here is the problem no one talks about. Without direction, imagination becomes anxiety. The same ability that allows you to imagine a powerful future also allows you to imagine worst-case scenarios in detail. Your brain does not distinguish between useful simulation and harmful simulation. It just keeps generating content. So you get trapped between two worlds. One where you are creating, and one where you are worrying, and both feel equally real. But there is a hidden psychological truth here. People who overthink are not stuck because they think too much. They are stuck because they do not filter what they think about. Creative thinkers are not people with fewer thoughts. They are people who learn to choose which thoughts to feed. Think about artists, writers, and inventors. Their minds are not calm. Their minds are directed. They take the same mental chaos and turn it into output. Painting, a book, a solution, concept. Now imagine the opposite. A mind that generates ideas but has no outlet, no structure, no expression. It loops, it repeats, it replays. It creates internal pressure with no release. That is what overthinking feels like. But it is not useless. It is unused potential. There is another layer to this that most people miss. Overthinkers are often deeply sensitive to detail. They notice tone shifts in voices. They detect changes in energy. They remember small inconsistencies that others forget instantly. This sensitivity is not emotional weakness. It is high-resolution perception. And high-resolution perception is the foundation of creativity. Because creativity depends on noticing what others ignore. But when this sensitivity turns inward, it becomes self-criticism. You start analyzing your own thoughts with the same intensity you analyze the world. Every decision feels heavy. Every mistake feels amplified. Every possibility feels urgent. This is where anxiety forms. Not from thinking itself, but from turning observation inward without balance. And here is something most people never realize. Your brain cannot tell the difference between thinking about a problem and living inside it. So when you replay scenarios repeatedly, your body responds as if it is happening again. Stress chemicals rise. Heart rate changes. Emotions follow thought loops. This is why overthinking feels physical. But the same system that traps you can also build your greatest strength. Because the mind that can simulate pain can also simulate solutions. The difference is direction. There is a reason many writers, filmmakers, and thinkers describe their ideas as something that would not leave them alone. The thought kept returning. It demanded attention. It refused to disappear. That is not randomness. That is persistence of cognition. And persistence is one of the strongest markers of creative output. But here is where most people get stuck again. They believe they must stop overthinking to feel better. So they fight their own mind. They try to force silence. They try to suppress thought. And the more they resist, the louder it becomes. Because the brain does not respond well to suppression. It responds to redirection. When you try to block a thought, you give it more importance. When you observe it without feeding it fear, it begins to lose control over you. There is a subtle shift that changes everything. You stop seeing your thoughts as commands, and start seeing them as raw material. Not everything your mind produces is true. Not everything is useful. But everything can be observed. And in that observation, distance is created. That distance is where creativity begins. Because creativity is not about having more thoughts. It is about stepping outside them long enough to shape them. Think about the moments when your mind feels most powerful. Not when it is calm, but when it is deeply engaged. When ideas connect rapidly. When you are lost in analysis or imagination. That state is not dysfunction. That is flow trying to emerge. But flow requires direction. Without direction, it becomes rumination. With direction, it becomes creation. And this is where identity begins to shift. You are not someone who overthinks because something is wrong with you. You are someone whose mind refuses to stay on the surface. You go deeper, sometimes too deep. But depth is not the enemy. Uncontrolled depth is. There is a difference between sinking and diving. One leads to drowning in thought. The other leads to discovery. And the difference is awareness. When you start noticing your thinking patterns instead of being consumed by them, something subtle changes. You begin to see loops. You begin to recognize repetition. You begin to identify which thoughts expand you and which thoughts drain you. And slowly you gain choice. Not control over thoughts, but control over attention. And attention is the real currency of the mind. Because what you repeatedly focus on becomes your internal reality. If your attention feeds fear, your mind becomes anxious. If your attention feeds curiosity, your mind becomes creative. Same brain, different direction. There is a psychological principle that explains this. The brain strengthens neural pathways based on repetition. Whatever you rehearse mentally becomes easier to access emotionally. So repeated worry strengthens worry pathways. Repeated curiosity strengthens exploration pathways. This means overthinking is not fixed. It is trained. And anything trained can be redirected. But here is the part most people never hear. The goal is not to become someone who never overthinks. The goal is to become someone who knows what to do with it. Because the same mental energy that creates anxiety can create insight. The same imagination that builds fear can build vision. And the same sensitivity that causes overwhelm can produce depth most people never reach. There is a quiet truth about people who overthink. They are often the ones who care more than they show. They notice more than they express. They feel more than they explain. And that intensity, when shaped correctly, becomes creative force. Not everyone will understand that. Some will tell you to stop thinking so much. But they are not living inside your mind. They do not see the connections you see. They do not feel the depth you feel. And that is not a flaw to erase. It is a system to understand. Because when you stop fighting your mind and start directing it, something powerful happens. The noise does not disappear. It becomes language. And suddenly, what once felt like chaos starts becoming clarity. You begin to turn thoughts into ideas. Ideas into expression. And expression into identity. And in that process you realize something simple but profound. You were never meant to think less. You were meant to think better. And maybe the real shift was never about stopping your mind from running, but learning where to run with it. Because the real danger was never overthinking itself. It was leaving all that mental energy unshaped, and used, and misunderstood. And when you finally see that, you stop treating your mind like an enemy. You start treating it like a powerful system that simply needs direction. So the next time your thoughts feel too loud, do not immediately try to silence them. Observe them, follow them, question where they lead. Because sometimes the mind you are trying to quiet is the same mind trying to show you something important. And the difference between anxiety and creativity was never the amount you think. It was what you decide to build from it. So ask yourself this. Are you trapped in your thoughts? Or are you learning how to turn them into something only you can create?